Here's 30 or so minutes of useless information about Star Wars Battlefront 2, which I hope some of you find useful.
What?
This video will include some Easter eggs, gameplay features, rare and hidden abilities, and so much more. And if you know any other details in Battlefront 2 that most players might not know, let me know in the comments. Hey everyone, it's Andrew.
Okay, first up, I was taking a little stroll around Yavin 4 in co-op. This is the same section of the map you can access in Galactic Assault, and decided to go take a look inside the Rebel base in the giant temple. First of all, being here while it's empty is pretty insane. I never realized just how big it was. The hangars are huge and filled with X-Wings and Y-Wings. You can look up to the ceiling. There's multiple levels. It's possibly one of the most real maps in Battlefront 2. Real in that it doesn't feel like a map in a shooter game. It feels like the real Yavin 4, the real location. Even more so when I walked past this. What? This room is in Battlefront 2? I've played this map, I'd say dozens of times, but never knew this map had the briefing room. The briefing room. This is of course where the Rebel pilots are briefed about their assault on the Death Star in A New Hope. There's a few pilot helmets sitting as little Easter eggs around the room, and this is a diagram of the exhaust port on the Death Star. Also, I tried translating the Aurebesh writing on the diagram here, and I think it says open trench. It's kind of hard to read though. And also, just outside this room are the table and other Rebel equipment that Princess Leia and the General watch the fight on, I guess. They watch the space battle from here and navigate and communicate and do all that stuff. That's here. So you know how the Ewoks have the Wisties pouch? Probably my favorite throwable weapon in Battlefront 2. Forget about thermal detonators, ion grenades, thermal imploders. Ewoks are like, here, have a bag of glowing bugs. Well, a little detail you probably didn't notice is that after you throw the Wisties pouch, the Ewok's bag will briefly glow once it's ready to be thrown again after the ability cooldown. Take a look here. You just see that little glow. This is great for playing with the HUD off, but also something extra to look out for while you're playing as the Ewok hunter. Very subtle visual indicator that your new bag of bugs are good to go. Do they go around collecting these things? How does it work? Okay, so the other day I was in the collection menu taking a look at a bunch of characters, and something about General Grievous had me a little confused. So you know how he has 4 lightsabers, right? Overly excessive in his lightsaber collecting. Well, I thought I'd take a look at these and figure out who they actually belong to. So this green one here belonged to Rancor, I think, who we saw Grievous slay in the non-canonical Cartoon Network Clone Wars animation, but he's also a canon character. This one here is Shaak Ti's lightsaber, who I could swear has died more than once, but I guess the General Grievous death is the canon version. But to be honest, these also kind of look like Ki-Adi-Mundi and Adi-Gallia's hilts, so I don't know. But then this hilt here looks exactly like Obi-Wan's. And this is Anakin's, except the blade is green. What is going on here? So I did some research, and these are actually the same lightsabers we see him use in Revenge of the Sith. Look, again, it's Anakin and Obi-Wan's hilt. So how can we explain this? Well, either this is a massive error Lucasfilm have just decided to run with, or Obi-Wan and Anakin's lightsaber hilts come from templates commonly seen in the Jedi Order. Or they created the templates themselves and then other Jedi used similar versions to them. I mean, yes, we know each Jedi designs their own lightsaber and each one is unique to the user, so perhaps these are slightly different from Anakin and Obi-Wan's. That's one theory. What's funny is that the canon reference book Lightsabers: A Guide to Weapons of the Force say these are Grievous's lightsabers, originally belonging to Pablo Jill, Rancor, Eth Koth, and Shaak Ti. Anakin and Obi-Wan's sabers are nowhere to be seen, even though they're the ones we see in the film and in Battlefront 2. So, in conclusion, Grievous's lightsabers in Battlefront 2 are accurate to Revenge of the Sith. Okay, so next up, I've never seen so many comments in a single video about the same thing. As lots of you told me, Vader's breathing also changes when he's low on health. Listen here. This is the injured Darth Vader sound effect from Return of the Jedi, and we also hear it in Star Wars Rebels. A neat little detail for Vader that you might miss if you're not listening for it, but it's good to see Battlefront 2 being accurate with Vader's respiratory problems. Okay, now we're heading into Jabba's palace to take a look at a few hanging details on the wall. So this is the spot where Han Solo was hanging on the wall in carbonite, and either side of the carbonite hanging on the wall are 2 animal heads. Disgusting prizes, probably bought by Jabba in some underworld dealings. Who the heck knows? It's terrible that they're here, but anyway, this one is a Tauntaun, all the way from Hoth, perhaps the same Tauntaun ridden by Han that smelled bad on the outside. And this one here took a bit of digging to figure out. This is a Jabba, a shaggy camel-like creature from Tatooine. And both these heads appear in Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. You can see them hanging on the wall in the exact same position in the background if you're quick and you look closely, or you pause the video, pause the movie on your VCR player. That's where I first saw these, the old VHS tapes. It's really cool how accurate the recreation of the cantina is in Battlefront 2. And while we're here in Jabba's palace, right in front of where Han Solo was frozen in carbonite, hanging on the wall, sitting on the ground here is another little Easter egg, Lando's skiff guard helmet. Obviously he wasn't needing it anymore, so somehow it found its way back here following the skiff sail barge battle. I like how no one knew who he was, how he's hiding behind the mask in the helmet, like, oh yeah, it's Lando, but no one actually knows. It's funny stuff. I bet he thought he was clever. You know how in Attack of the Clones was the first time we ever got to see Yoda in action? It was like the most epic moment ever. Some people were worried about it because obviously Yoda, you got to be very careful with how you handle the character and everything. Well, it happened. Yoda, Attack of the Clones, and the first thing he does is absorb Count Dooku's lightning and send it straight back at him. Amazing stuff. He can deflect Force Lightning. Well, you can also actually do this in Battlefront 2. If you're blocking with Yoda and Count Dooku fires his lightning at you, Yoda will absorb the lightning and all you need to do is press Yoda's Force push button and he sends it straight back, or can even redirect it towards another enemy. Now, I'm pretty sure Yoda can also do this with Palpatine, although I think it works a little differently, just doesn't seem as direct, but there's some definite lightning being sent back with Force push. It seems really rare you'd actually get to use this ability in Battlefront 2. I don't think I've ever seen it happen in a public match. The only time I ever saw it was when I asked a bunch of my friends to help me make it work. But what a crazy small detail. Battlefront 2 has several of these small, rare mechanics that were put into the game only to occur in very specific situations. And I love that detail like that. What an authentic experience. Okay, next up, we're heading to Felucia. And lots of you have probably seen the green force field fence towards the Separatist spawn. This is a reference to the fence used in the Clone Wars episode to help stop pirates from raiding the Felucian village. But what you might not have noticed is that if you walk over to this spot here, there's actually a button you can use to turn the fence off, which is awesome, especially because turning the fence off doesn't really do much from a strategical point of view. This is towards the back of the map, and at no point while playing on Felucia have I thought, man, I wish I could turn the fence off to get through this section faster, or anything like that. You don't even really need to come back here if you're following the objective. So the fact it's here is pretty funny. I'm just going to go turn it back on. But I would love to know if you've ever been in a position where you found it useful to turn this thing off. And while we're on the topic of pressing buttons, on the Mos Eisley Galactic Assault and Co-op map, way back towards the end of the Rebels' defense when you get to the U-Wing hangar, is this button here, which you can use to open and close the window. This makes for a great sniper vantage point towards the end of the battle, and closing the window also obviously prevents you from being shot. Close the blast doors, as they said.
Close the blast doors. Open the blast door.
In amongst the corridors of destroyed Rebel equipment following the evacuation is this protocol droid. This is K-3PO, who made some background appearances in The Empire Strikes Back and unfortunately didn't make it out alive. You can actually see a deactivated K-3PO here in this scene where Han's trying to get Leia out of there. K-3PO is just off to the side, just chilling, probably dead, probably never going to be turned on again. How sad. No one's going to recharge his batteries. And he also appeared as an Easter egg across several maps in Battlefront 2015, so you might have seen him there before. I want to take a look at Luke's face, or rather Mark Hamill's face. You might have noticed this scar on Luke's face for the Return of the Jedi appearance. This scar is also visible on Luke's Hoth appearance, but if we swap to Luke's Yavin 4 ceremony and farm boy skin, the scar is nowhere to be seen. Well, that's because just after shooting in New Hope, Mark Hamill was actually involved in a car accident that fractured his nose and cheek. He actually had to have his nose rebuilt, and in the car crash also cut his lip, and that's why we have the two different faces for Luke. Also, some people say the reason Luke is attacked by the Wampa at the start of Empire was to explain his new face scars, although George Lucas denies this. He said, sure, it helps, but Empire is set a few years after A New Hope, so Luke's been fighting in the Rebellion for a few years now, and that's enough to explain the scars. Although there's also a deleted scene after Luke gets out of the Bacta tank where he's having this mask removed from his face, though they eventually decided to not use it and scrapped the scene. This was supposed to explain his injuries. But amazing detail for Luke to have these screen accurate faces in Battlefront 2. The devs paid attention to this. Now, in the last episode of these videos, which I'll link in the top right corner, I talked about how each reinforcement has a unique melee animation. Well, certain heroes also have similarly unique melee attacks. Boba Fett's melee uses Boba's flamethrower. Unlike in the original Battlefront 2, you can't use Boba's flamethrower as an actual weapon, so EA's Battlefront 2 included it as his melee, and this is a one-hit kill. And also Emperor Palpatine produces a small burst of Force Lightning, also a one-hit. Captain Phasma uses her staff as her melee attack, which does the same thing as pressing the actual ability button, similar to the BX Commando droids. Also, Boushh and Chewbacca have very similar attacks where they basically slap enemies with their hand. Boushh uses his right hand and Chewie uses his left. All other blaster-wielding heroes have pretty standard melee attacks to regular infantry, and lightsaber heroes don't have melee attacks because their entire playstyle involves using a lightsaber, which is a melee attack in itself. But now, what about BB-8 and BB-9E? I tried their melee buttons to see if anything happened, and instead of attacking, they did something special. Yep, that's right. Pressing their melee button actually switches their light on and off. This is especially cool as BB-9E using the red scanner we see in The Last Jedi, and BB-8 has a white light. I never knew this was a thing, only discovered this the other day. Really cool. It would be great to see BB-8 and BB-9E brought into a game mode like Ewok Hunt for a special event. Pretty sure it's the only other game mode where you can use a flashlight or a torch in Battlefront 2. Don't think there's anyone else in the game who can use it, but let me know if I'm wrong about that. I'd love to go exploring the dark Endor forest with BB-9E's torch. Okay, next up, I want you to take a look at lightsabers. There are 10 lightsaber wielding characters in Battlefront 2. 6 I'd count as prequel characters, 2 original trilogy, and 2 sequel trilogy. And there's one minor detail that makes each era of lightsaber more accurate to what's seen in the films. Let's start with the prequel characters. Their lightsabers have a pointier tip than what's seen in the original trilogy, and that's reflected in the game. You can see here Obi-Wan, Anakin, Maul, Grievous, Dooku, and Yoda's lightsabers are all pointier and sharper at the tip than Luke's and Vader's, which are slightly more rounded at the top. And this is accurate to what we see in the films, but the fact the devs have gone so far as to slightly modify this is really impressive. Such a minor detail, but adds that extra layer of authenticity, making the heroes feel more real. And the prequel lightsabers are also quite pointy, but also a little thinner, I think. Kylo's is obviously quite different with the unstable blade, but you can see what I mean here. Such a small detail that makes all the difference. Okay, next, I want to draw your attention to Darth Vader's breathing. Another very minor detail you might not have picked up. Everyone knows the iconic Vader breathing sound effect, and if you hear it, it's time to get the hell out of wherever you are, but the Battlefront 2 devs have actually modified this slightly in certain situations. When Vader is standing still or walking at a slow pace, his breathing is normal. If you start to run as Vader, I wouldn't really say Vader can sprint. If you listen carefully, you'll hear Vader's breathing speed up. And then if you keep running, Vader's breathing gets really fast. Listen. Sounds like he's gasping for air. Stop running and Vader's breathing will slowly return to normal after a few seconds. Now, I tried to see if this also occurs when Vader gets low on stamina, which because it's Darth Vader takes forever. But no, I think his breathing stays the same. Changing his breathing, I think, just makes him feel a little more real, and it's not even something you probably notice while playing, but it is a bit of added ambience to improve immersion. Next, we're heading back into the menus to take a look at the Avician Gunner. So in the last one of these, I showed you the Stormtrooper and the hash marks etched on her blaster, but if we spin this thing around and take a look at the other side, just here you'll see a Lothcat, also etched into the blaster. Another cheeky little detail added by the devs. And on the same side, here we have some Aurebesh writing, which reads Z6B Rotating Blaster. It's the name of this big gun. Lots of details in this one character. What's that, like 2-3 Easter eggs all right here. Okay, next up, Princess Leia has 5 different appearances in Battlefront 2, but one of these is more unique than all the others. I'm of course talking about Boushh. And something you might not have noticed, I love that the developers went to the extra effort of adding the UB's language to her emotes. Here's one of Leia's normal emotes.
You're a jittery little thing, aren't you?
And here's that same emote with the Boushh appearance. A bit of background, Boushh was a male bounty hunter who was killed when trying to blackmail the Black Sun crime syndicate, and then Leia got a hold of his armor and used it to infiltrate Jabba's palace and try rescue Han. And there's a few mixed opinions on this, but built into the helmet is supposed to be a voice scrambler, scrambling everything the wearer says into UBs. And that's what you can hear in Battlefront 2. Boushh also has additional voice lines in the game, will just randomly talk in UBs even without pressing an emote, so it's great to see they didn't get lazy and just use Leia's normal voice. I'm really glad they gave Boushh a unique personality. Okay, next up, I want to talk about how each and every hero has a unique death animation, and several of these are actually inspired by specific scenes in the films. For example, when Obi-Wan is defeated, he'll fall to the floor and look like he's holding his leg, just like he did in his duel with Count Dooku after he was struck down. Vader falls to his knees as if he's kneeling before the Emperor. Maul falls to his knees just like he does in Star Wars Rebels when he shouts Kenobi. Kenobi! Although I wish he just, got cut in half. That'd be cool. Just collapses into 2. Grievous reacts just like he did in Revenge of the Sith when he's shot by Obi-Wan. Han puts his hands up and then behind his head, similar to what he does on Endor in Return of the Jedi. Rey just completely falls over. Leia acts like she's been shot in the arm, like on Endor outside the bunker, and I'm sure there's more references I've missed, but I think it's a tough thing to handle the death of these characters without making it too brutal in a video game like this, and I think DICE have done a great job. Each hero's death feels unique, yet still noble. Like the hero isn't actually dead, but she's just defeated, taking a rest, you know what I mean? Just gonna have a little nap. This isn't Jedi Outcast or Academy, where there's literally nothing left to the imagination. Next up is something I'd never noticed before until I was taking a closer look at some of the characters on the collection menu. Captain Phasma is very shiny, isn't she? Looks like one of those shiny metal trash cans. But there seems to be a lot of detail in the reflection of her armor, more so than you might expect that's being reflected from this dark inspection room she's standing in. So I zoomed in, squinted my eyes, and to me, this looks like a TIE fighter. Wait a second, she looks like she's in the Death Star 2 hangar, that Battlefront 2 map. How strange is that? I'm not sure if this is her armor's reflection on every map or just in the collection menu, but there you go. That's how the developers have done Phasma's reflection, just adding some detail and texture to the trash can. Is something I think most players would have seen by now, but perhaps if you're a new player or you've just completely missed this, you might not have seen it. In Jabba's palace, under the trapdoor, is a deceased Rancor. The same Rancor Luke slayed in Return of the Jedi, although it's nowhere near the door he used to crush this beast, but here it is. So I don't know how it moved, but there's also a bunch of flies all buzzing around and everything probably stinks down here. And there's also a dead Rancor up high on some of the tree trunks on Felucia. But how funny is this character right here? It's characters like this that I feel make Star Wars feel so Star Wars. A guy who's upset that his gigantic, wild, disgusting beast has been killed. Hilarious. He's so upset about it. Whoever put this character in the film was a genius. This dude gets more screen time than 9-Up. Just kidding. We're heading to the First Order's Resurgent class Star Destroyer, and you might have noticed there's a cafeteria section here where the Stormtroopers get their lunch when they're not fighting off invading Resistance forces. Well, there's actually a few Easter eggs here I've talked about in other videos, but I remember this map having a lot of little details, so I came back and on some of the tables found this, a hologram of a First Order Stormtrooper. But why is this on some of the cafeteria tables? So I decided to try and translate the Aurebesh. the Star Wars text here. At the top, it says FN0208, so Stormtrooper 0208. And then on the side here, this says Worker of the Month. So this Stormtrooper received the Employee of the Month award on this Star Destroyer. No idea what for. Perhaps he was able to land a couple lucky shots in the First Order's last battle. But what did FN0208 receive for being Worker of the Month? 1 week of holovid access. Yes! That's what it says down here anyway, among a few other things. I was having trouble translating this because the writing is so small. But basically, he got to watch TV for a week. Not getting many First Order privileges, are they? Only allowed to watch TV for a single week. What else do Stormtroopers do in their spare time? I bet it would have been interrupted as well because, you know, the Resistance invaded. Okay, next up, I want to draw your attention to some of the reinforcement characters. Almost every reinforcement in Battlefront 2 has their own custom melee attack, and this is something that was only added to the game with the final update when the ARC troopers were updated. For their melee attack, they turn their blaster pistols backwards and use the handles as blunt weapons. The Wookiees swing at enemies with their bowcaster and then also have the slam attack. The ISB agent is probably the fastest reinforcement melee with her taekwondo kicks and spins, and she also has the assault training speed ability for faster movement. Ewoks have their spear, just like in Ewok Hunt. The BX commando droids have the vibroblade, which is one of their abilities. The Kafek spy has the truncheon. Ovisian gunner has their charge attack and can swing their giant blaster at enemies. The Sith trooper has a sidekick. Both the B2 super battle droid and B2 rocket droid swing their mechanical arms. The Death troopers have just a basic swing with their blaster. And then the clone commandos have one of the most unique attacks of all. They punch using the vibroblade attached to their wrist, which is taken straight out of Republic Commando. And this is a one hit on regular infantry, making it the most powerful standard melee attack of all the reinforcements. Now, all the jump and jet troopers, the aerial class, have pretty much the same melee as regular troopers. And there's one class that has no melee attack at all, the Droidica. Although I do wish they could run people over when you're, rolling around the battlefront. Just run someone over. But overall, a lot of unique characters and animations. Okay, next up, I want to show you an incredibly minor detail about Rey you might not have noticed before. So Rey has several different appearances. There's her standard appearance, the Last Jedi appearance, Rise of Skywalker appearance, and also her yellow lightsaber. And there's something small here with her yellow lightsaber you probably never noticed. Here, I'll compare the yellow lightsaber with her regular blue and see if you can tell the difference. See anything? Did you notice Rey's thumb when igniting the lightsaber? With the yellow blade, Rey flicks her thumb to turn on the lightsaber, but with Anakin's blue lightsaber, she doesn't. If you remember from the film, Rey's yellow lightsaber is quite unique in that she actually twists this dial to turn it on. That's what she was doing with her thumb here. Most other lightsabers are turned on with a button. So the fact DICE went as far as to animate her thumb for this different appearance just to keep this accurate, I think is incredible. What attention to detail. The award in thumb animation goes to DICE. While we're in the menu, a couple of other really small details you might not have noticed. Let me show you the Ewok. Now, this is something I caught out of the corner of my eye a while back when I was inspecting the Ewok. If you look really closely at his bow, right here is actually a Stormtrooper helmet etched into the wood. And it's so hard to tell, but I think next to it might be a few hash marks, like the Ewok is counting the number of Stormtroopers he's killed. Those evil, savage Ewoks. Getting Ewok Hunt nightmares. Anyway, no reason at all for DICE to add this to the Ewok. The detail is so ridiculously small you'd never see it unless you were looking for it, but this just gives him a little bit of added personality, doesn't it? And I figured if the Ewok has a tiny detail like this, then perhaps one of the other classes will too. So I went searching through each of the reinforcements and actually found this. Etched into the metal of the Ovisian gunner's blaster cannon is the helmet of a First Order Stormtrooper with crossbones, and also he has a few hash marks next to it as well. So there you go. Everyone's counting their Stormtrooper kills. Next, we're heading to Jabba's palace on Tatooine, and this is something I'd actually never noticed on this map, even though I've been playing the game since even before launch, because this has been in the game since before launch. In one corner of the palace, way downstairs, locked behind bars, are 3 Gamorrean guards. 2 of them are kind of just sitting there looking sorry for themselves, and the third can't stop trying to break his way out of there, helplessly pulling on the bars that lead into the next cell. Not sure what they're doing locked up down here though. Did the rebels or the Empire lock them up? Or did they disobey Jabba and are waiting to be fed to the Rancor? Also, you can't shoot them or interact with them in any way, unfortunately. Of course, I tried this and would have been cool to actually see them react, but not to be. I also tried stunning them with a grenade, but that didn't work either. Too busy sitting there miserable and helpless. So one thing players who are new to the game might not have noticed just yet is that certain planets have different times of day and experience slightly different weather conditions. No, it never stops raining on Kamino, but Tatooine Mos Eisley, for example, has 3 times of day: the blue sky, sunup, and sunset, and night. And this completely changes the complexion and color of the map. Hoth has 2 separate times with daytime and this incredible pink sunset. Also, Crate got an added sunset map with Battlefront 2's final update. There's Naboo, there's day and night on Naboo, and a bunch of others. But I love how this adds another layer to Battlefront 2's abundance of maps. The game has something like 25 unique locations, so to add day and night elements on top of this keeps maps feeling different every time you visit. If I could choose just one more map to have an added time of day, I'd want Felucia Night, which there's a mod for, but man, this thing is gorgeous. And speaking of Felucia, if you head inside some of the Felucian village houses, you'll notice lots of children's paintings hung up on the walls. Well, take a look at this here. This is an Acklay, that creature Obi-Wan faces in the Geonosis arena with the giant pincers. These guys are actually native to Felucia and appeared in the original Battlefront 2. They unfortunately weren't included in EA's Battlefront 2. Can you imagine how scary it would be running into one of these guys in the Felucian jungle? Man. No thanks. Scary enough in the original Battlefront 2, but it's cool how they at least dropped a little reference to them here, acknowledging their existence on this planet. There's a bunch more creatures you can find in these paintings and heaps of other Easter eggs on Felucia. I've covered them all in a previous video, so if you want to check out that, the video is in the top right corner. Now, if you're new to the game, this is something else you might not have noticed. There are 2 major large-scale game modes in Battlefront 2, right? Galactic Assault and Supremacy. Well, on certain maps, the events of Galactic Assault and Supremacy are actually linked. Take Kamino, for example. In Galactic Assault, the clones were fighting off the droid invasion on Kamino, and it seems as if the invasion was just beginning, just as you launch into the battle. You'll see enemy ships coming to attack Kamino, the Trident-class assault ships will be landing and just start drilling into Kamino structures, and then jump to Supremacy. Parts of Kamino have been destroyed and overrun. There's dead clones and droids, wreckage, and it feels like the battle has been going for quite some time by this point. Also, all the Kaminoans you see tending to the injured clones in Galactic Assault have either been evacuated or killed. Supremacy seems to be the aftermath of Galactic Assault, and you'll notice that across other maps in Supremacy as well. Sometimes it might be the other way around though, so please correct me on that. And while you're taking your time to notice the finer details of these maps, take a look at the battles surrounding each of Battlefront 2's larger maps. There are lots of large-scale events that play out on each of these maps, like the Battle of Geonosis. You'll see spider droids, dwarf spider droids, clones, droids, and more, all pushing up and down the battlefront. Felucia has hailfire tanks and other reinforcements in the distance. I still wish we could actually control and pilot these in the game, but there are so many of these different events you can watch and play out in the background that you might not notice if you're too focused on the actual game. So next time you play, just stop and take a look for a couple minutes. It's beautiful to see all the background animation and noise that's going on. You'll also notice capital ships overhead firing missiles at one another, dogfights, skirmishes, fighters flying overhead, and so much more. There's a lot of detail in this background stuff, so take a look. Okay, now I just want to take you guys briefly back into the menus to observe a small animation you might not have noticed. If you watch closely, you can actually see the characters breathing. This is something I noticed a while back, just while sitting in the menu, but their chests actually gently move up and down as their lungs inhale and exhale. And this is something you don't always see in other games. Sure, characters have idle animations, but do they actually breathe? I think it's really cool to see this kind of attention to detail and the fact that the characters are actually alive. Good job, DICE.
There are so many more cool hidden details, Easter eggs, features in Battlefront 2 that I haven't mentioned in this video. And I think videos like this serve as a reminder of how dense and impressive this game really is. Outside of just gameplay itself, there is so much more to explore, to discover Easter eggs, references to the broader Star Wars galaxy that I think a lot of players skim over, but add to that sense of immersion and realism we get in Battlefront 2, making you feel like you're in the Star Wars galaxy and making you feel like you you want Battlefront 3 ever so much more. The work DICE did to bring this game to life, to bring the Star Wars galaxy to life in an online multiplayer shooter environment, I think is so impressive. And it's details like this that make me, and hopefully you also, appreciate what this game is, what they created here. The great memories I have playing it, and hopefully the new ones I'll create as I play it into the future. But if you know about any other cool details in Battlefront 2, or in other Star Wars games for that matter, that I might have missed, that I might not have seen before, that most players might not have seen before, please let me know in the comments. Also, you can come follow me on Instagram, Twitter, join my Discord and TikTok for more Star Wars, more gaming, and more of me.
This is getting out of hand.
And watch this video here for more Star Wars, subscribe, and
Stay bombastic.